Hello, UK Crime Book Club, and hello, Gordon Brown. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks very much, Sam. How are you?
I'm yeah. Yeah. How are
Suffering
you?
from your bad back.
Yeah. I'll live. How are you?
Good, yes. Lovely and warm today.
Too warm for me. It's warm in Manchester. Managed to dry 2 lots of washing today, just in case anyone was wondering what I do all day.
I managed to cycle 20 kilometres.
Oh my word.
Yeah, it's mostly flat, so it's easy. It's cheating when it's on the flat.
I bet me and my bad back and 2 loads of washing, I probably still sweated more than you did riding.
Nah, I don't think you did, no. Trust me.
We'll give everyone a minute just to find us. I know that we're being pinned at the moment. The things that come out of my mouth, honestly. Hello, Tony Millington. Says hello to us both. I've made myself blush. I'm an absolute raging moron. Let's move on. So tell us a little bit about 31 Bones before we get going. Show the cover off.
Oh, yeah. One cover. 31 bones.
Gorgeous
Hang
cover.
on, there's better, though.
Ooh.
That's my
You got your hardback.
from America. That's the first hardback I've ever had. All my other releases have gone to paperback and ebook. So I got my first, and I didn't know it was coming. So the post came, and it was like, I don't know what that is. And I ripped it off, and I saw 31 Bones, and I thought, well, why have I got copies of that? And I went, oh, hang on, it's hard. So I'm now a happy bunny. I'm now displaying it. It's one of those things. I walk around the street with it, and I'm going, hello, how are you? Yes, very nice to meet you. Thank you. Yes, you want have a look? So, how did I describe 31 Bones? The story is based. It kind of came out of an idea, which is in Spain there's a big expat community, and 31 Bones is simply based on the idea that there's a mother in her late 70s who owns one of those bars that most people will have seen if they've been to Spain. It's the sort of bar where you used to have the currency on the ceiling. Everybody pinned the currency up on the ceiling. It would serve John Smiths because that's what you did. It probably did roast dinners on a Sunday. It does chips. It shows the football. It's that sort of bar.
But I recognise that bar.
Yeah, and they're everywhere. And it's in an old town. It's in a town on the coast in Costa Blanca, but it's more or less a concrete shell. There's no windows. You could be anywhere. It's that sort of bar. And she owns it. And right at the beginning of the book, so it's not a plot spoiler, she dies, drops dead. And her daughter, Daniela, who hasn't talked to her in 20 years, flies out to what she thinks is a funeral. And then she thinks, I'm going back. But it turns out the mother's left her the bar, which is hers. But on top of that, there's a group inside the bar called the Expatriates. So there's a failed accountant, a failed failed racing driver, failed pair of models. There's a failed accountant. And as a group, they haven't got much money. And just before Effie, the mother, died, they were doing a property scam. And the property scam was to raise enough money to get away, to run. But the money goes missing when the mum dies. And when Daniela turns up, they think she knows what it is. So she's on the hook for the money. On top of that, there's a local gangster who lives up in the hill who's skint. He thinks she knows where the money is. And then the last one is there's a Capitan from the Guardia Civil, which is one of the Spanish police forces. He's suspicious about the death. So the whole story is Daniela turns up, no idea what's going on, and she's on the hook for all of that. And that's the kind of start of the story.
Where on earth does an idea like that come from?
Actually, it came from two places. I'm lucky enough to own a small place in a town called Javia on the Costa Blanca. So therefore, for the last 4 or 5 years, you hear stories, a lot of stories about expats. I don't know if you remember a phrase, but there's a phrase that's been around for years, was the Costa del Crime.
Right, okay, I've heard of it.
So in the late 70s, I actually just wrote an article for an American blog site on this. In the late 70s in Britain, between Britain and Spain, we had a treaty that was 100 years old. If you were a criminal in Spain, you could get shipped back to the UK. For technical reasons, it lapsed. The Spanish wouldn't renew and the Brits wouldn't renew. So for a short period of time, there was no extradition. And all the British, the gangsters, the pimps, the arse, you name it, shipped out to Spain because it's lovely, it's warm, you've got sunshine, you've got British food, they talk the lingo if you're in the right place, and couldn't be shipped home. So they lived it up. If you go and look it up, there's a film called Sexy Beast with Ray Winston. There's quite a
Oh,
few.
right, yeah.
That's based on that. There's quite a few movies. J.J. Ballard wrote a book called Cocaine Nights about it. That whole expat criminal thing is still there. No matter what they say, it's still there. Only recently they managed to find, what was it? Was it 100 odd kilos of cocaine wrapped in plastic bags lying at the bottom of the bay? Someone had dropped it in the boat. The biggest artificial manufacturer of one of the drugs was only about 20 miles from where we are. Makes it sound like it's really bad where we are. It's not. So I was looking for something new to do. I wanted a new book. I'd been writing US thrillers. I'd had a go at a 1970s book which didn't get much traction, and I said to my agent, "I've got this idea," and it was really born out of the fact I remember these property scams in Spain were quite famous, especially during the crash. A lot of people put money into stuff that never happened. And I was sitting in a pub one night, and there was two guys behind me. I don't know who they are, but they were talking about money laundering, and I don't think they were talking about washing their money in the washing machine. And that set off the idea. But the way I tend to write is I'll just kind of start, and I had this scene in my head of Effie, the older woman, trying to con the next person for the property scam, and then she dies. And I didn't even mean her to die. She wasn't supposed to die. She was going to be the star of the book. But I got about 40 or 30 pages in, and I thought, nah, it's not working for me. So I gave her a heart attack. Well, might be a heart attack. So that's how that's where the book, that's where the idea came out from.
We have got hellos and comments and things already. So Lucy, hi Lucy Sampson, says hello to us both.
Hi, Lucy.
Marion Todd, hello, lovely Marion.
Hi, Marion.
Andrew says hello. Hi, Andrew. And I was having a look who the other comment was that I can't see, but I still can't see it. No, somebody's name's not coming up. It might have been Andrew, actually. Hi, Cheesy Chum. That's Lucy to Marion. Not sure what that's about, but apparently Marion's having curry at the moment, not cheese. I would have thought it was too hot anywhere for a curry. I mean, I'm bright red. I'm so warm. It's unreal.
I've got a fan at my legs.
I've got a fan here at the side, but I can't turn it on because my desk is stacked with paperwork.
Yes, well, I'm actually got nothing on from here down, and I've got a fan next to me. And it's very comfortable.
I actually know that's a lie because you walk past and I know you've got shorts on.
I know. Oh, well, it was a good idea.
It was a good idea.
I don't think it was. Trust me, it's not.
Moving on. Tony says stands like 31 Bones could be a comedy.
It's actually got quite a bit of humour in it. And it's quite interesting because when I wrote my first book, which is Falling, which was written 10 years ago, it was distinctly written tongue-in-cheek. It was kind of tart noir, but very much with humour attached to it. And this has revisited it, which has been unusual for me because the last 4 have been thrillers. They've had the odd funny moment, but not really. And this felt like going back in time. And also the characters are just, you don't have to be in Spain. Anywhere you meet them in the pub. It tends to be people who think they could have done better in life. And there's always a reason why they didn't, and it's never their fault. It's always somebody else's fault. But that just makes it funnier when they talk about it, and that's kind of where the humour comes out of this. So
What made you come up with kind of accountants and failed models, and where did the ideas for the group come from?
So
the expats.
If I take, hang on a minute, drags a book down. This book, right, which is quite old now, started with an idea that I had. This will explain where the characters come from. Started with an idea I had. I read a story years ago about a guy in America in the 1920s during the Depression, lost all his money, went up a tall building to throw himself off, and only fell 1 floor, right? Landed because of the wind. Well, it wasn't even just the wind. I think he just landed in the shelf. But he wrote a book in the 50s, late 50s, and what his book was about, this idea, what if I died that day? Would the world be any different? And his wife said to him, you need to go and talk to your friends. So he went to talk to his friends, and the first person he talked to was actually his brother. And his brother said, well, I would never have met my wife, and we would never have had our son, and our son's a heart surgeon, and he's saving lives. And so I thought, what kind of person would that be? And it was an accountant. And so I wrote an entire book as with the start as an accountant. I never meant to. I've got two of them. There's falling two. So when it came to do this one, when it came to do 31 Bones, I was kind of thinking, who do you meet when you're out there? And I wasn't particularly looking for any one character. I was just trying to think what sums up, what attracts me. And I think part of it is some of those jobs are quite dull. Apologies to lawyers, apologies to to accountants. And then a couple of the other ones where racing driver, I actually met one that wanted to be a racing driver, and he close on the worst driver I've ever sat in a car with. Yeah. And I've no idea, but he's still in his head. And I know someone else who's now probably in his early 50s, is still really good racer, just refuses to give in the dream. And it's the same with the models. And again, I went back to the fact those characters are interesting. You know, the ones that don't think the career's over. I've still got that one magical moment left in me. And that's where it came from. So some of them are people not necessarily I've met. Some of them are people who I may have bumped into, and some are just clean out my head.
I love that. Absolutely fascinating. Lucy's still on about cheese. I'm definitely a cheese lover, so I'll be joining you and Marion, definitely. And she's got steak with a wedge of Stilton. I mean, this is literally just turning into never mind books. What about the cheese? What cheese are we on?
Are we just can we do menus? I'll just do a book of menus. Spanish paella, I can't think. I wouldn't know. Spanish food, me and food don't. To me, it's just people love food. I just like eating. So it's. I can't think of menus in Spain other than I can't think of a single food in Spain now. You ask me. That's ridiculous.
There we go. We've just got an idea for a book, Cooking with Crime.
Yeah,
so we'll write a short story each, and we'll put a favourite recipe in each.
We did for bloody Scotland. We did. There was.
You did.
Yeah, there was.
Here's me thinking I've got an original idea. Nope, nicked yours by accident.
Did that. We did cocktails as well, which were criminal cocktails, and we've done food for it as well. In fact, I was on stage. We were on stage one year. There was 6 of us on stage making up cocktails for the audience. Criminal cocktails. There was no concept to the whole thing. It was a bit of a mess, but the good news was everybody in the audience got a drink, and they loved it.
You ever do that? Count me in.
Yes. Well, it was great. I mean, we just kept making cocktails and said, "Who wants one?" And they all put their hands up. Hey.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you?
Without saying. Give me cheese and a cocktail and a book, and I'm a happy woman.
I'll go cheese and a beer and a book.
I'd go with cheese and a beer and a book as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could go for that. Lucy says there's definitely a bit of caper feel to the books. Read 31 Bones and its follow-up when it comes out.
Oh, the follow-up is going to be called 6 Wounds.
Okay.
And the follow-up comes out next spring. So we've had a COVID delay on the follow-up coming up. And it is the first time, I'd love to say I meant to do this, but it's a murder mystery. I didn't mean to write it, but it's a definite, rock solid, someone dies, you have to guess who did it book. So
I can't wait. I always love to see if I can figure them out.
I couldn't. I got 3 pages from the end and still had no idea. I seriously did. I must have walked around the block about 100 times thinking, I don't know how to finish this. And then eventually I did.
Oh, intriguing. That's me and Lucy hooked. Andrew asks, do you have to do a lot of research for your books? And how long does it take from first draft to publication and talking to your editor?
Good question. Does it take a lot of research for this book? I spent hours in the bar. Like I had to find the right bar. In terms of research for this one, actually, it was about being in Spain because, funnily enough, I wrote this one. I write in a Mac, and for years I've written on planes, on trains, because I had a day job, and I still have a bit of a day job. But because I had the day job, I would write anywhere. I wrote an entire book on United Airlines flight U91 to New York and back because I was doing the trip about twice a month. So I would use the 6.5 or 7 hours to write because I was writing a book. In fact, I used to mow, and at night it took off at 7 o'clock. And if you got a following wind, you could get in 5.5 hours, right? Really quickly. That's not very good. I wanted longer because I needed longer to write my book. But so because I wrote on the laptop in Spain, I actually took it round the town. When I was thinking about where I was, I took it out. So I would sit in the square in Javier, which is the town in the book's called El Descaro, but actually it's based in Javier. So I would sit at the seafront, or I would sit in the bar, or I would sit in the square. But there's some research in this. I had to do a little bit of research into the property scandal. There was a big scandal in Spain. A guy called Gürtel, whose an enormous amount of money went missing, and also there's it's quite interesting the dynamics in Spain with the expat market. There's a number of newspapers, Olive Press, Euro News. There's a lot of newspapers just aimed at expats, and they are just full of stories that would turn into books. I swear, you could open any one any week, and you're going to find a story that could turn itself into a book, because there's always something going on. So I tend to do that, but I'm less of a planner and more of a just get it done, just sit down and write.
When you said that to me last week, I did actually. When we got off camera from our promo, I did sit down and start writing my book.
Congratulations! See,
I've not got very far, but it's going.
Sam was asking.
It's been going every other day. So not every day, but every other day. So work in progress. It's absolutely terrible so far, but let's see.
Trust me, every first draft is abominable. You were asking the question, how long does it take to do from the first? About 3 months, maybe, to do it. And then maybe about
3 months for your first draft?
Yeah, about roughly. I do about 2,000 words a day. So if I'm on form, I can do it quicker. Not usually. That's the kind of time period I aim for. And then what I'll do is I need to stick it away for a while. It's one of those tricks. I need to stick it in a drawer and leave it alone, because you can't read it straight after. And then I'll spend about 2 or 3 weeks going through it before I send it off to the editor. And then the editor will send it back, and it'll take me about a year to fix. Like all the comments. No, that's not. Comments are good.
Back in the drawer.
No. It tends to be. It's one of those. I remember. I think it was Ian Rankin told me a story once that we were at a dinner, and Ian had said he'd obviously got the edits back on whatever. This is a good few years ago, 8 or 9 years ago, and he'd got the edits back for the first set of the book. And I said, "So, what did he say?" And he goes, "I haven't read them." I went, "You haven't read them? Why?" He says, "Well, they've been there for a couple of weeks." He says, "I don't want to read them yet, because as far as I'm concerned, I sent them a perfect manuscript, and in my head it still is perfect." So he's not going to read the comments. So I thought that's a good way to do it. Just stick it away for a couple of weeks. So that's usually about how it works. That's normally how it works.
I don't think I could wait. I think I'd be devouring every word. And Andrew also wants to know if your books are available in libraries and on audio.
They're definitely available on audio. So it's ISIS. They're available through Audible, and you can get it on Amazon. So they are. There's a wonderful reading of it. The only interesting thing is, obviously, it's a female protagonist in 31 Bones. But when they first sent through the audio, not the audio recording, they suggested it was an actor, and I went, I'm not saying you can't do it. And then they got a word back from them. Is it a female protagonist? I mean, yeah, it is. It would help if it was so. There's an audio version. Yes, the libraries, depends which library. Sometimes you might have to order it, other times you will. So libraries at the moment are a bit hit or miss for obvious reasons. We've got an appalling situation in Glasgow where a number of libraries look like they're not going to reopen, which is terrible. We've got Cooper Institute. So if you go to at Cooper Save, at White Inch Library, there's about 3 or 4 of them starting a campaign, because since lockdown they've never been opened, and they're not going to reopen them, it looks like, and that's appalling. I just think
I don't even know where to begin with that.
And it beggars belief, because it just restricts access to people, and the absolute amount of money involved in keeping the library open for what it gives you back to kids, to adults, to people that can't. Books are not cheap. And libraries are a great way to get choice as well. You wouldn't walk it. I mean, Waterson's and the bookshops are brilliant, but libraries, you can take a risk. Like take a few books you might not have thought about, and that. So, but yes, it's available in libraries.
That's a really lovely way of looking at it. That you might be a bit more hesitant in a bookshop if it's 20 quid for a book.
Yeah, exactly.
You might walk into a library, take 5 or 10 books home, and that's where the author really makes the money back, because then they will go and take the risk on the next book if they've enjoyed the first one.
Well, it's how do you discover new books if you keep reading this? One of the big things they're saying at the moment about lockdown has been the book world is saying that A-list writers are doing really, really well, and they have done because people are going, A, for security, B, they're writing good books. But standing out from the crowd as a newbie or lower down is really, really, really tough at the moment, just because that, by the nature of things like Amazon, it tends to recommend the big books. Whereas libraries, independent bookshops, the rest, Waterstones, there's a lot of them. You can go up to someone physical and say, look, I quite like this. What's like that? Tell me something interesting. And that's because I work with Bloody Scotland, because I'm involved with Bloody Scotland, we get to read an awful lot of new stuff that I wouldn't previously read. We're doing our own book club now, and part of that is reading 3 books that maybe I would never have read. And that's what annoys me about libraries, because that's what libraries let you do. They let you experiment till you find what you like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I spent all of my childhood in libraries. And look where I am now, all because of books.
Well, if you want a real secret, it shows how socially immobile I am. Although I've worked all over the world and been away and back, I am less than 300 yards from the library I went to when I was 5. I'm less than 300 yards from the cinema I went to when I was 5, although it's no longer a cinema. It's now a block of flats, and I'll never go and see anyone in there because it should still be a cinema.
Yeah, our cinema got knocked down, our little local one.
Terrible.
Affectionately known as the Flea Pit, apparently. I was too young for the nickname, but
ours
that was all right.
Ours was Toledo. Actually, it was just known as Toledo.
I remember going watching My Girl in there. Bit of a thing for Macaulay Culkin. As a kid, not now. Married for a long time now, very happily. Sorry, darling. No, he's gone out.
It's on tape anyway.
I know. He doesn't watch me. Why would he? He has to live with me.
Oh, true. That's my wife. There's no chance she's watching. That's when I see she'll suddenly put a question up here and I go, yeah, she is watching.
He does occasionally watch me just on his phone and I don't know he is. It really throws me. When I come back afterwards and I go, was that right, that? And I go, okay, what did I say that I shouldn't have done?
Here's an idea for a book. Stalking via book groups.
It's a very good idea. You're not the first one to have it. You're not the last. I bet you'd do it differently.
Set it in Spain. That way I can go and do the research out there.
Alex Shaw, carrying on the cheese theme. Hello, gorgeous Alex. What is your top tip for a cheese to write to, and what beverage would you pair it with?
Cheese. Deep fried.
We've seen Marion, look what you started.
I'd do it with deep fried mozzarella sticks. Yeah. And it would have to be beer as cold as you can possibly get it. So cold you can't lift it.
But just not ice cubes in it, like apparently they do in America. I don't understand.
No, there was a beer. I can't remember what it's called. I worked in the brewery for 15 years. I used to run the marketing department for beer brands. And way back in the 90s, they come up with this idea for beer that was served at -4, right? And the way they did it was they had a pint, which was poured, I forgot what it was called, Arc. I think it was called Arc. And they created this font, poured the beer, and then they hit it with a sonic wave. I have no idea how this works. It was technology going mad, yeah? But it froze the head, right? So you had beer, frozen head on the beer, right? And it dropped to -4. And it was lovely. Unless you had fillings, in which case it wasn't brilliant, right? And the other thing is, the reason it failed is, see if you were holding it in your hand in a pub, see after about 5 minutes, your hand was like a lump of ice. So they ended up making gloves, which you just then looked stupid wearing. But the idea of frozen beer, I love it. I love the idea. It never lasts, but I just love the idea. So I'd be mozzarella sticks and really chilled beer.
See, the first place my head went, and I like a lot of cheese, is blue cheese, so some sort of Stilton, one of the strongest you can get, on a cream cracker, buttered, with some red onion chutney, and then whatever I fancied with it.
That sounds really nice.
A red wine or a lager. It's really nice.
Yeah.
One of those, when it's kind of like, it's nearly bedtime, you're having a route through the fridge thinking, am I hungry? Am I not hungry? Spot that, suddenly hungry.
See, you're in the same boat as me. I eat cheese late at night, right? And my wife said, that's going to give you nightmares. It never has. I just eat cheese late. In fact, I'll eat cheese at 2 a.m. if I'm hungry. I can go up in the middle of the night, go and have some cheese and come back to bed. Drives the wife daft.
I'm not quite that. Oh, you've hit a new cheese level.
Oh no, not used cheese. I got famous for this. I eat. My brothers do the same. It's a brown thing. I've got three other brothers. All do the same thing. Eat in the middle of the night. I know it sounds really weird, but I'll get up and have something
No,
to
one of
eat.
my best friends does it.
One of the weirdest ones. The reason my wife got really mad one time. She made a sausage casserole with about a dozen sausages in it, right, for the next day. It was ready, and we woke up in the morning. There was only 2 sausages left. Yeah. So I managed to eat 10 sausages right in the middle of it. And she's never forgiven me. That's about 30 years ago. And she still goes on about it. As if magically. So one day I'll go and make a sausage casserole just to get her over it.
I think you should. Maybe that's what will close the door on the whole conversation. Maybe. Well, she needs closure, Gordan. Closure.
She does. She just needs to get those. All right. I'll go and make her a sausage casserole then.
I would. Buy some flowers to go with it or a nice bottle of something.
Oh.
Somebody has said, I'm a newbie, so are all your books in Spain? Now, they're not, but
No.
Where else have you written?
So, bit of a history. So, the first book I said was Falling. So, that was written, that's set in Glasgow. That's all set in Glasgow. And then I wrote a book called 59 Minutes. Oh, I've got it there. So, I wrote that. And that's set in Glasgow. And funnily enough, half of it's set in Spain. This is way before we owned anywhere in Spain. It's written, the first about 40% of it's written from the first person. The last 60% is a diary. And it's a criminal who rises all the way to the top of the crime world, gets put in jail, 20 years later comes out and goes back on revenge. But the only problem is he's no money and no power. So he's back on the street. And so that was set in Glasgow. And then, strangely, America then asked me, not Britain, they wanted a sequel to this, which I never thought of. So there's a book called Falling 2. I don't think I've got a copy. He says, oh, I do. Haha. That's all about the Great Train Robbery being repeated. So I had the idea, what if they did Great Train Robbery again?
How have I missed that one?
Sorry?
How have I missed that one? That sounds incredible.
So the idea behind this is dead simple. What if the guy that came up with the idea of the Great Train Robbery never got credit, right? So he gets dumped. He's never famous. It's not a Ronnie Biggs. It's none of these guys. And as a Glasgow criminal that did get the money from it, moving all these worldly goods out of the country, and they're going to cross the same bridge that the Great Train Robbery took place on. So the idea is he'll do the Great Train Robbery. So I think I said, what if the crime of the century happened again? I think it was the strapline. It was something like that, I think. So it's all based on the Great Train Robbery. So I did 3 of those. All set in Glasgow, Spain, Glasgow, and in England, down in Brightgo Bridge. That's where it is. And then I went off in one. I then wrote 4 books. Have I got them around? I've got 3 of them here. I then read, so I had Deepest Wounds, Darkest Thoughts, Furthest Reaches, and Highest Lives, which is a really off-the-wall character called Craig McIntyre. So they're thrillers. They're out-and-out thrillers, with a guy who has got an ability. It's a partly parapsychological ability to set people off. Like this is the strangest set of books I ever wrote in terms of writing things. The idea is, if he's in a room and you've got 2 best friends, he can bring out the worst in the 2 of you. If you've ever fallen out in the past, or you've got any history, if you're in his presence and he gets stressed, then the worst comes out in you. So he becomes the perfect assassin. Put him in a room with 2 famous leaders that hate each other, and they'll kill each other. So it sounds a bit of an odd concept, but that idea was really weird. I got that in a local pub not 2 miles from here. Me and a friend one night were in the pub, Friday night, really quiet, 5 of us in the pub. Me, 2 guys there, a guy there in the barmaid that was sitting behind us. And these 2 guys were as drunk as a skunk, like completely kale-eyed, right? And it turned out they were brothers. And out of the blue, suddenly they started fighting. And if you imagine, me and my friend are at the bar facing out to the pub, and they fought in an arc round us. Like, so literally they started there, they knocked over chairs, battered each other. And but they were so drunk they couldn't do any damage. And then after about 10 minutes, the police turned up, whipped them away, right? And that was that over. Apart from the guy here. And the guy here had sat the whole time they were fighting like this. He never looked up once. He just, and I thought he was just scared. I thought, he's scared, like he doesn't want to get involved in the fight. But I never thought anything of it. Then when I was walking home, I said, what if that's his life? What if fights break out around him because of him? What if he caused them? what would his life be like? And that's how the whole Craig McIntyre series started. So
what an idea. I need to spend more time in the pub, apparently.
yeah, no, pubs are really good places for ideas. Although they are up until about the third pint, then they're not. First 2 pints, fine. Third pint, nah, not so good.
I was a barmaid for a long time, so there must be stuff I can mine out of my own head.
Oh, if you worked in a
There
bar,
must be.
you've seen everything. It's great. Bars are brilliant places to find set pieces from, because you just have to listen to a bit of a conversation. I sneaked one in one night. I'll never meet these people in my life ever again. But in the second Falling book, I was looking for that kind of pub line. It was to give these guys an exit. Just as they're walking out the pub, I wanted something funny. And I was in a pub in the south side of Glasgow years ago, and there was a couple of us there, and it was really, really, really busy. But next to us, there was like two women sitting having a drink, and it was clear after a while that the husbands were at the bar, and they were sitting separate. And the husbands kept coming across to say, when are we going? So they must be going to a party or something. And they would say, we'll go at whatever time it is. And then it got to closing time. And the two husbands come across, right, when are we going? Right. And one of the women turned around, we'll just have one, we'll just have two more drinks and then we'll go. So that became our byword. It used to be, we used to, we'll have two more drinks and then we'll go.
I love that.
So that's that.
I'm probably guilty of saying that at some point.
I think most people are guilty of thinking it. Do you want another drink? Yeah, two.
Yeah. Yeah, I must have ordered two, at least.
By mistake.
Last orders.
Well, especially with lockdown, 10:30 closing. It's like, yeah, I could three, thank you.
Yeah. Not actually sure when the last time I went to a pub was. I'm not sure I can even think off the top of my head.
Oh no, we've been to a few pubs.
Not a clue.
Not so much indoors, outdoors a lot. Amazing what they've done up here outdoors, Glasgow. Some pubs have done a brilliant job. So.
We need to talk about, in no particular order,
all right.
Bloody Scotland.
Yep.
4 Blokes in Search of a Plot.
So Bloody Scotland, number 10. This is the 10th one this year.
10th one. Congratulations.
Will be 17, 18 and 19th September. And outside of that, we're working on it at the moment, but the big problem we've got is last year we had to go all digital. So which went really, really, really well. I mean, we did a phenomenal audience around the world. The problem this year is we'd love to do something live, but at the moment we're still at that spot where COVID permitting, local councils. So the way I think it will work is the best scenario would be we'll have a mix of digital and live. That'd be great if we can do it up in Stirling. And if things really went south, we'd have to do it all back on digital again. So we're currently pulling it together. Announcement will be a bit further down the line before we announce who's involved, etc. The one thing we have done, though, is we've announced the long list for the McIlvanney Prize.
You have?
Which is a phenomenal list. And we've also just announced the debut prize as well, the short list for the debut prize. So both of those have just been announced. So from our point of view, we're building our way towards it. But I think we're like everybody else. We're not going to be daft. We'll take advice as we go along. We'll listen to what everybody's saying. Plus, we want people to feel comfortable. The last thing you want to do is try and put something on that people are sitting there going, I'm not comfortable. So, but I'd love to think we could do something live this year.
Yeah. Fingers crossed for you.
Yeah.
4 Blokes in Search of a Plot.
You've seen it. I've been on.
How did it start?
So there's Douglas Skelton, Mark Leggett, Neil Broadfoot, and myself. And for those that have never seen it, we effectively within an hour make up a crime story live. We were doing it on stage. We've done it online. And while one person's writing, the other 3 authors talk to the audience. And the weird bit, which we always say, is the person typing, has to wear the tea cozy of inspiration. I don't have it. I've not seen it in about 6 months because of COVID. Douglas Skelton has it at the moment. He's looking after it. He's complaining it's expensive to look after. It is. It likes a lavish lifestyle. He's had to put in a jacuzzi just for it. So from our point of view, what happened was the Scottish Book Trust, this is a long time ago in Scotland, did this thing 5 years ago. So what they did was they got authors on a Sunday and they gave you a half-hour slot on their Twitter account. So starting at, I think it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon through to 6 at night, I got a half-hour slot. And what you had to do was, while the first author started writing a story, but in tweet form, When they finished, the next author picked up, and then the next author, and that's how you wrote the story. A year later, we got approached, and this time what they wanted to do was do it on Facebook. So 4 of us on Facebook, making up a story as we went. And to be fair, it wasn't the same as it is now. It was just literally one of us writing and then reading the story out. Then the next author picked up and did it. But when Bloody Scotland came along that year, we thought we'd give it a go, try and do it live on stage, just to see whether it worked. It was a really dumb thing to do because it's fun to do, though. It is fun to do. So we started, that was the first year we did it live on stage, and we asked the audience to give us a weapon, we give the audience to give us a protagonist, pick one of the authors, and then it's over to the author to write the first 100, 150 words. They finish, read it out, and then the next author is chosen, and that's the way it goes. It's kind of developed into something more like a comedy routine by mistake. Well, I don't think it's by mistake, I just think it's our writing makes it that way. I feel I think we thought it was going to be serious at the beginning, but it's not. But it's fun to do.
It might be dull if it was serious.
Sorry?
It might be dull if it was serious.
Wouldn't work. It definitely wouldn't work. And the other thing is, the idea now is when you finish writing, what you want to do is set up the next author as badly as possible. You want to leave it so the story is impossible. If people have seen it, Mark Leggett will introduce at some point a nun.
Yeah.
If not with a machine gun, with some massive whatever it is with him, just to throw you. It'll be a really serious story, and then he'll say something like, and a nun walked in, and we just got it out, really, really.
And you all grown?
Yeah, we do. I think what's interesting, though, is that actually people talk about what the raw version of a story looks like when you're writing it. If you're not an author, what it looks like. It very much looks like what we write. It does in a way. In many ways, that's how rough it is at the beginning. And then what you do is go back and edit it. The problem is we don't get a chance to edit. We just have to just read it out. Whatever it is, we just have to read it out.
Do you think you'd ever finish some of the stories and then turn them into a book between the 4 of you?
Have you seen some of the subject matter?
Yeah.
We've killed everybody with everything. We've killed Ravi Burns with an Exocet missile. We've killed, I can't remember what we've done. There's a website with about 8 of the stories on it, 4blokesearching.com. You can actually find, if you read them, you'll realise they're never going to turn into books. I
know, but that's kind of the fun, isn't it?
It is. Well, actually, you say that, there's probably ideas in all of them, but they just are people. When we were in Spain, we did this live in Spain, which was me, Mark, and Douglas were out. We did this live in Spain, and nobody knew who we were at all. And there was about 150 in the audience, right? Mostly expats, but there was some Spanish there. And I can't remember the weapon. I'll have to look up the weapon, but whatever they gave us, see, by the time we had to do it in 2 halves because it was too hot, we had to take a break in it. They were as into it as we were. They were giving us why don't you say this? Make one of the characters do that. They said it started to feel like you were doing a film script. So I'd love to do it. I think there are stories, but will they ever? I don't think so. But anyway, if someone reads one of the stories and gets an idea, we want commission, right? you can't nick it without giving us credit.
I'm not sure that you could ever prove that their idea came from one of yours.
Yeah, we know. We'd said send Douglas Skelton out to get him.
Oh yeah, do you know what? Absolutely fair. Yeah, you would.
He's written about more true crime than anyone else I know. He knows more baddies, and he probably knows more ways to kill a person. So we'll just send him out.
We've still got so many comments. Leslie Lloyd says hi to us both. Hi, Leslie. I hope you're feeling better. Jonathan Peace, whose debut book comes out this year.
Oh, congratulations,
we'll be watching this back
Jonathan.
Tomorrow. They had him and his wife had the first jabs today. So wanted to pop in and say hello, but probably not staying the full time, which is fair enough. He will watch at some point. Apart from being the wrong end of a pantomime horse, what has been your greatest achievement as a writer? I can't see who wrote that. You'll have to tell me.
Apart from being the rear end of the pantomime horse, my greatest achievement is when I graduated to the front end of the pantomime. Because I was on stage, Douglas Skelton has written a play, and he writes it. He's got Carol Ramsey, Michael Malone.
It was Carol Ramsey that asked the question. I've just looked on my phone just to see who it was.
Yes, true. So, my first ever appearance with them was the rear end of the horse, and that meant I had to stare at Neil Broadfoot's arse for an hour and a half, right? So when it came to do it again, I said to Neil, I'm going to the front. I'm not doing that. I'm going up the front, and you can go up the back. Yeah. So that's where the Pad to White Horse comes from. The greatest achievement. I think I'm really proud of bloody Scotland because I think it's just gone a really amazing amount of places. I think also the first time that this, wherever it is, I've lost my book, when that appeared on the shelf, I was slightly gobsmacked that something I knew was on sale at Watersons or on sale at Borders. I remember Borders at the time. I had my launch in Borders, and I still think it's the biggest launch I ever had because something like 140 people turned up. Because it was everybody, my grannies, not my grannies, my friends, my aunties, my cousins, everybody and his auntie, and they'd only given me a small corner to work in. And that was it. But that, and then, so I think from my point of view, I think it would be the first book coming out would be because it just took me so long to get there. I would say to anyone writing, I mean, it took me a long, long time to get the first book out the door. And do you know, I nearly mucked it up. I had my first.
I did not know that.
Oh God, I got so close to throwing it away. I used to be a marketing director. I was a marketing director for a TV company, STV, and I was coming to the end of the contract one summer, and I thought, I'm going to give writing a book one more. I tried before and not really got anywhere. I've got one of these suitcases that's got about, I don't know, 7 or 8 novels in it that I wrote before, that when I'm really rich and famous, people will pay me millions to make into a film, but at the moment, they're still rubbish and in a suitcase. And I said to my wife I was going to write a book, and I had this one idea I told you earlier, which was about the man falling from the roof. But actually, in the book, he falls and gets rescued. And I wrote it 3 months, edited it, sent it off to 4 publishers, and beyond belief, one came back and said they'd like to see more. Because back then, you sent a synopsis, 3 chapters, and a bit about yourself. And then, so I was like, oh my God. So I'm on the computer, bang, 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 send it. I got a phone call 2 days later. Hey, do you want to come through for a coffee? Oh my God, a coffee with a publisher, right? like a teenager, like, off I go. And then I got there, and a guy called Xander Wedderburn, really, really nice guy, who effectively told me that the rest of the story was, quote, crap, right? And I was like, he says, well, it's full of typos. I said, it doesn't really make much sense. You can kind of see where it's going. And I went, oh my God. So I thought, I'm fairly I hadn't tidied it up that much, but I'd got it as good as I could get it. Because one of the tricks is never send rubbish. Try and send the best thing possible to a publisher. See, because I'd been so excited about a publisher saying, send me the manuscript, I hadn't sent them the latest file. I sent them one from about a month and a half ago, which was all rubbish. It's still, chapters were out of order. And yet, to be fair to Fledgling, which small publisher in Edinburgh, they published it. So it was one of those ones I almost cocked it up because I just got overexcited.
Wow.
So that was how it started.
That is good advice. Look what you're doing.
Yeah, just check what you're sending. Yeah, yes, you know, it seems a fairly basic rule when you think about it, but I didn't. I was just, I'll send. So, but it is one of those things. Make sure. I always say to people when you're putting submissions, we see submissions for a lot of stuff through bloody Scotland. You read a lot of authors' work. It's such a hard thing to do, but you have to send the best you can possibly send. A lot of people, I think, and I've had this discussion with publishers, they think the publishers will see it for what it's worth, if you know what I mean. Right. But the competition is so, it might happen, now and again it might happen, but the competition is so stiff that you really have to work hard.
You've just got to give yourself the best chance.
Best possible chance. Do you know what, I put it down to the John Peel effect? This is going to, do you remember John Peel? Oh no, I'm now getting too old, right? That's okay. For those under the age of 200, John Peel, DJ Radio 1, famously played more or less anything. He would get sent in the early days cassettes, then obviously vinyl, then CDs. And one of the things, he got so much stuff, right, that he would decide what he played based on, he put the cassette in and press play. And what he always said to the bands was, put your best possible track first. He says, because I'm not going to listen to track 2, I don't have the time. And that was so true, because a lot of bands I heard later on said the mistake they made was we never got seen because our best tracks were later on. And the other bands said it's not what you want to do. Sometimes you want to put in a good track, a better track, a really, really good track. You know, you can, no, same with writing. Whatever they pick up at the beginning has to sing. That's how a lot of the publishers will look at it.
We've got an insane amount of comments. So Andrew says he can't travel, but if bloody Scotland goes, he's a massive fan of Alex Gray. So if Bloody Scotland goes ahead, I hope it goes well. And if you see Alex Gray, give her my best wishes.
I will. I'll say.
So Andrew sent me some lovely words that I passed on to Alex after the interview.
Yeah.
And she was really thrilled with his comments. And he's such a lovely friend. He's such a sweetheart.
No, that's good. I will. When I see Alex, I'll say she's doing. Alex is just a writing machine. She does phenomenally well with Lorimer series. What's she on, book 16? If I get it wrong, she'll hit me.
Probably, yeah.
It's book 16. It's up there. That's him. It's 15, 16. Somebody will be able to tell us. Yeah, but she was at the start. It was her.
I should know the answer to that because I read them. But off the top of my head, I've not got a clue.
Yeah.
Do you have a daily writing routine? So you're saying about 2,000 words.
Yeah, I've got a really oddball routine at the moment, which is brought on by COVID. So last year, when 31 Bones got picked up, I then had space when COVID kicked in to write. So I had 6 Wounds, which is the next book. They actually bought both at the same time. They wanted both because they sold them into America. So I had to write 6 Wounds and then I've got a new book which I'm looking at, which is nothing to do with 31 Bones. It's a completely different book. And what I was finding was with lockdown, I was getting up at 4:30, 4:45 in the morning. And I'd started to get into the habit of writing from about then till about 7, 7:30. Once I hit 2,000 words or around that, I used to quit. And then what I'll do is I would then go and get breakfast. And annoyingly for my wife, I might go back to bed, which really hacks her off. Because I say, well, I've done a day's work. No, not. But the other time I do is I'd go out and for half an hour, I would think, what happens next? I used to not plan that much, but I don't need to know the whole book. I just like to know, I've written to here, what's going to happen next? And that'll take me far enough to get another 2,000 words. And then I'll do the same again and again and again. So for no reason whatsoever, I was getting up at 4:30, 4:45 in the morning and writing, despite the fact that from a day job point of view, I do marketing. And I have still got some clients, but there wasn't a lot of work around at that point. So I didn't need to do it then. But then when it came to having to put some other stuff in recently, I'm back into doing the same thing. I'll wake up I know it sounds nuts, but I love the fact I can then get to about 7:30 and go, done. And yeah, I know other authors that work late at night. Craig Robertson, I remember talking to Craig. I think Craig starts about midnight. I think he's one of those. And there's other ones right at different times, but I like to do first thing in the morning. I have to say, when I read it back sometimes, maybe I should have waited an hour, woken up, couple of coffees. but I get there. I just have to edit a bit harder when I get up. So that's how I tend to do it. Or when I was writing the thrillers, when I was writing any of this lot, they were all, without a word of a lie, I wrote Furthest Reaches on that flight. I even tried to get United Airlines to sponsor it because I kept tweeting them, telling them I was writing the book, and no one ever replied, ever. I kept saying the marketing department must see this as the best opportunity ever. Here's a book written entirely on a plane. Nothing. Not a word from them. But I've written in trains.
Have you never come back to them since?
No, well, I did. When I got the third book come out, I was still on the flight. So I was still tweeting them. I'm now writing my third book. No United Airlines. I'm paying to sit in the seat writing books. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. If there's anyone from United Airlines out there, there's 4 books written more or less on your planes. And mind you, I didn't put any of the planes in it, and that was deliberate. I think at one point they had to fly somewhere, and I made it American Airlines. Not United. No, I didn't.
That'll serve them right. And what were you going to say about trains before I accidentally interrupted you very rudely?
I worked in Manchester Macclesfield for a long time, just north of Macclesfield. Yeah. So a place called Bollington, this village. So I was on the train from Glasgow to Mac a lot, and that's where when I started writing. In fact, the beginning of 31 Bones must have been on the Mac train when I first started writing. I used to say I love doing it. The train's a great place to write. Put in a set of headphones. I write with music on. I have to have music, usually trance dance, if it's got to, or Finnish electronic music, Australian electronic music. And bizarrely, I've just been asked to name and why 8 albums I would recommend to people. I just sent it off today. Not necessarily your favourite albums, just 8 albums that you would say to people, and that nearly killed me. I mean, this is like a fraction of, like, there's LPs and the rest of it. it nearly killed me getting 8 albums. I couldn't, and eventually when they said it doesn't have to be our favourites, it got easier. But I love music, so I write to music all the time. I will have it blasting out everywhere. I'm desperately trying to learn the guitar, and I'm rubbish at it as well.
I'd be terrible. I've got no coordination.
Well,
none.
I've compared a 2-day music festival. Me and my mate managed to, for 2 days, rock bands for 2 days, from 12 o'clock to midnight. Loved it. Always wanted to go on stage with a guitar, just even play one track. Just, I don't care what it is. I'll go on with madrigal singers from the chapel. I don't care what. I just want to do one track on stage. It's one of my bucket list things.
Do you not think you could go with Val McDermid and Mark Billingham and the gang and do just play a triangle?
I could do a very good triangle. I must say to Val and Mark,
maracas.
Do you need a rock triangulist? That's probably not the right word for it. But then, yeah, how could you go wrong with a triangle? Yeah,
I don't know. I feel like I could step up to that plate.
Yes.
I feel like I could do something bad with one.
I think I'd be doing really well till they put a microphone in front of the triangle, and I guarantee it'd be out of time. The band would get completely thrown by this ding at the wrong time. That would be it. They do brilliant. Fun-loving crime writers, brilliant. They do really, really well. Great thing to watch.
Imagine being on the stage at Glastonbury.
I know. They even say it's magic. Yeah. I think it's a great thing that happened.
Marion Todd said planner or pantser. Now, I know you've said that you just write by the CT pants. Do you ever plan?
At that one wee bit, funnily enough. In fact, with Marion, funnily enough, we wrote a short story. Marion was part of a team. The debut authors last year in Bloody Scotland wrote a short story for the sponsors, the Glencairn Glass, to get published in the Sunday Post up here. And the 5 of us had to write a short story. And very much the way we wrote it was, we wrote our bit and sent it to the next person, who then, so between us all, whether it was Deborah or Francine or Stephen or Marion or myself, we ended up writing it, and there was no plan at all, none. And I've also, funnily enough, I've done a novella with Douglas Skelton, which Polygon published last year, which was his main character is a journalist called Rebecca Connolly. In fact, Douglas's new book, Rattle of Bones, is out in September. August, I think it's coming out. So he used his character and I used mine, Daniela Coulston, from this, and we wrote a story between us. And we punted it to Polygon, and the way we wrote it is I would write about 300 or 400 words, send it to Douglas. Douglas would write about 300 or 400 words, send it to me. I would write, and we managed to write about 16 or 17,000 word novella that way. We definitely, the only planning we had is when we phoned each other up and said, this is rubbish. I kept, where's it going? Not a clue. Not a blind clue. So I tend to find most of my stuff, the planning now tends to be for the next day. It's not longer term. Occasionally an idea might bum in, a big idea that sits at the centre of the book. So the whole idea of the stolen money kind of sits at the centre of the book because of that conversation, and everything else spins around that.
In the video that I've shared in the book club today, you showed some of the scenes from the book. Yep. So one of them is a car park.
It is.
Explain why there's a car park.
So in Javia, the town it's based in, has got 3 parts to the town. There's a Pueblo, which is the town in the hill, traditional 16th century, lovely part of Spain, old traditional town with buildings around it now. The Puerto, which is the port, which is where the fishermen used to be, fishermen's houses were. And then right along the bay from it, there's a place called the Arenal, which is the beach and the bars that are open 73 hours a day sort of thing. So when I set the book there, the reason we love the town because you can choose any day you wake up, you can be a Pueblo, a Puerto, or an Arenal person. Just depends what you feel like. And I wanted a bar, but I was conscious there aren't many Brit bars in Javia. There was about 3 or 4 or 5. And I was conscious that if I did write it and I made it too like one of them, it would be guaranteed to be one. So I had to make one up. And as you walk from the Pueblo down the hill to the port, there's a bit of wasteland on the left-hand side, which one time will get picked for building and hadn't. So I put the bar there. So I stuck the bar there and I said, right, it's a breeze block bar. It's got its own car park and that's where it lives. And then about a year ago, they built a car park on it. Never asked me. No, never got my permission to do it. So now the bar would have to sit further back, but the reason I'm showing the car park is that's in the book exactly where the bar sits, kind of out the way. It's not on the mainstream. Tourists aren't going to go into it because they just don't. It's not that sort of bar. That's why I picked that place to put it. So I had to film a car park because there's no bar to shoot.
I did think when I was watching it, I just thought that's hilarious.
Yeah, I know. There was other areas I was going to shoot. There's a couple of other scenes, but loads of people do this. But I was weirding people out, walking around with a camera, talking to myself about. The classic was I was in the pubs. The next book, the book after this, the book Six Wounds, when it comes out, starts off with a murder right at the very, very beginning. And I was talking to two people in one of the Brit pubs, and it was one of the Brit pubs. And I was just chatting, and in my head, I knew where the murder was going to take place because I just started writing it. And I happened to say to them, "That's where the dead body is," right? And the two guys drinking next to us, one of them spilt his drink. And I went, "No, not a real dead body. No, it's like a made-up dead body." And I thought, "Oh my God, right? Really, Gordon?" So, talking out loud's not a great idea.
I'm more upset that he spilt his drink.
Yeah, I know. So am I. I didn't offer. I'm Scottish. I didn't offer to buy him it. That's just. I would just say that's your own fault. You shouldn't have been listening in a conversation.
Marion said she had a plan. It's just that nobody else knew what it was.
So, to be fair, when we wrote that short story, Marion kind of held it together. She did have a plan, and she's dead right. We had no idea what it was. So we just ignored it completely and wrote what we wrote. It was a great short story. It's worked out really well. The sponsor loved it because their product was in it. So we got a thing called the Glencairn glass, which is the world's favourite whiskey glass. And it was centred around that. And it's a great idea for a story because technically, I think it's possible. I won't tell you because it would spoil the story, but technically, I think you can kill somebody that way and get away with it.
Lucy says it's a great short story.
Yeah, it's just fun. You can get it on, where can you get it? Oh, I'll tell you where you can get it, glencairn.co.uk. They've still got it on their website. It's about, I don't know how many words it is. Marion will be able to tell, but it takes up 2 full pages of a newspaper. That's how big it is. So it's kind of that size. So it doesn't take long to read.
We have come up almost to the end of our hour.
Oh, have we? Oh my God.
I know, that's absolutely flown. Do you want to give everybody a reminder of all of your books and of 31 Bones and where they can buy it from?
So 31 Bones is by Polygon, so big thanks to them. And you can get it on Amazon, you can get it at Waterstones, you can get it on audio, you can get it more places than that if you want to. Has just come out in America last month, which is great news. Previous to that, as I said, Falling is the earliest book in 59 minutes. That's Scottish crime fiction. If you like Scottish crime fiction, that's what that is. And then if you like your thrillers, he says, hang on, there are 4 of these. Actually, there's also a short story with this as well. So there's 4 of those in the McIntyre series. But and Six Wounds, which is the follow-up to which Lucy has seen, is coming out in either April or May of next year. And I don't know whether it's coming out when it's coming out in the States. So that's all my books. And also 17, 18th and 19th September is Bloody Scotland, which.
And we've already agreed that we've blocked it out in our calendar so that you can promote
Magic.
it. That's already done. We had a really lovely thank you from Andrew. Thanks for your kind comments, much appreciated.
No problem.
And Marion says 45,000 words.
I knew she'd know. You can guarantee. I just know.
I was looking down, waiting. I knew it was coming.
It's two sheets of a newspaper. So I now know how many words 2 sheets of a newspaper make up. If you just fill it with type.
And Lucy says, lovely to see you, Gordan. Tony's saying thanks, Gordan and Sam. Marion Todd, such fun. Thanks both.
No problem.
I've loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Brilliant.
You can come back anytime.
Sam, thank you very much for inviting us on. It's been brilliant. It's been great fun.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all the questions, everybody.
That's it. No, thanks to everybody for tuning in. Yep. And if you go out on discount on Kindle, it was 99 pence up to yesterday. I haven't checked this morning.
Where's your hardback? Where's the hardback?
Oh, the hardback. Where's my hardback? Here's my hardback.
Come on, one final shot.
There's the hardback.
Hey, there it is. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Sam. Thanks a lot. Bye.